Well, welcome back to the Michael Lofton Show on Reason and Theology, covering a wide range of things in the news today. Especially, we're going to take a look at the blessing that was recently done under the a bishop in Uruguay. And it is for a famous couple that lives in a same-sex union. They were recently given a blessing, and this caused quite a stir online. And it was very scandalous for many as they saw footage of this, or I should say at least photos. And there's a very large controversy surrounding it because there are certain claims that were made that this was in line with Fiducia Supplicans. So we're going to take a look at that. I'll go into detail about it, but first I am going to cover a few other stories that I think are worth addressing. Number one, an update with the FSSP, the Fraternity of St. Peter, the priestly fraternity of the Society of St. Peter, that met recently with Pope Francis. There's been a lot of rumors about maybe Pope Francis is going to prohibit or revoke their permission to celebrate the Latin Mass. So we're going to take a look at that. I also want to address Pope Francis's comments about gender ideology that I think that a lot of people haven't seen, as well as a Spanish bishop's comments that were made recently by, a Spanish priest who looks like he got himself into some hot water by making some comments about Pope Francis, and so we're gonna take a look at that. But let me go ahead and remind you before we dive in, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I notice when I look at the analytics that half of the people who watch the show are not subscribed. So half of y'all are not subbed. Go ahead and hit that sub button right now. Hit the subscribe, and while you're at it, hit the like button. All right, so let's talk about the fraternity, the priestly fraternity of the Society of St. Peter. I'm going to share it on my screen. You should be able to see. This comes from the FSSP website, fssp.org. They're in full communion with the Catholic Church. If you recall, after the schism of Marcel Lefebvre, as Pope Francis calls it, the SSPX broke away from the Catholic Church. There were a number of priests who wanted to be reconciled to the Catholic Church, and under John Paul II, they were. And they established the FSSP, among other societies, in order to give an opportunity for people to celebrate the Latin Mass while remaining in communion with Rome. And so that's kind of the history of this group. And when Traditionis Custodes came out, there was a great deal of concern that maybe they would not be able to celebrate the Missal of 1962, what's again called the Latin Mass. And so they went to Rome, met with the Pope, and he immediately gave them permission. As they left with his signature, giving them permission to continue to celebrate the Latin Mass, and effectively indicated that Traditionis Custodes does not apply to them. But there have been a lot of rumors lately. There are even content creators spreading misinformation and engaging in fear-mongering and getting everybody all riled up and concerned and worried, and telling people that Pope Francis is going to revoke their permission. There doesn't appear to be any evidence of that so far. So it seems that they're engaging in these rumors without any kind of evidence. And in fact, this meeting that just took place, again, this was posted today by the FSSP. It seems like the meeting went really well. So let's take a look at it. Audience with Pope Francis. Now, there is a longer version of this that it did appear on the internet that was for private circulation with the FSSP. I read it. It looks like they redacted some of it and only posted this little snippet portion. Having read the full thing, I can tell you that it just continues to show that Pope Francis is very generous, very respectful, and very kind in his interaction with the FSSP. Let's see what it says in this version. Following a request from the priestly fraternity of St. Peter, Pope Francis invited the Superior General of the FSSP to meet with him. He received him in private audience at the Vatican on Thursday, accompanied by the Superior of the District of France and the Rector of St. Peter's Seminary. The meeting was an opportunity for them to express their deep gratitude to the Holy Father for the decree of February 11th, 2022. So again, if you recall, that was the day that he told them, you guys can continue to celebrate the Latin Mass, and Traditionis Custodes does not apply to you. That's the significance of that day. By which the Pope confirmed the liturgical specificity of the Fraternity of St. Peter, but also to share with him the difficulties encountered in its application. The Pope was very understanding and invited the Fraternity of St. Peter to continue to build up ecclesial communion ever more fully through its own proper charism. Father informed the Holy Father that the decree of February 11th, 2022 had been given on the very day of the Fraternity of St. Peter's consecration to the Immaculate Heart of Mary on the feast of Our Lady of Lourdes. The Holy Father hailed this coincidence as a providential sign, and in that other version that has appeared online, that is being disseminated online, Pope Francis said, "It is of the Lord," and so was very again welcoming. There's no indication from this that he is somehow going to revoke their permission or further restrict their access to the Latin Mass, and so looks like this is a good thing. But that's it. That's all that the FSSP has released so far. You could see some additional pictures where they met with Pope Francis, and all smiles. It doesn't look like anything massive occurred. So here we are. All right, so let's move over to the issue with Pope Francis and gender ideology. If you recall, there's supposed to be a document coming out soon from Pope Francis and Cardinal Fernandez, the head of the dicastery for the doctrine of the faith. We don't have a date yet, but Fernandez indicates that it will be out, and it is going to be very favorable to the critics of this pontificate. So Pope Francis, as you know, has been very severe in his criticism of gender ideology, and he continues that with this comment. Pope Francis, today, the ugliest danger is gender ideology. He says that this is one of the biggest problems, one of the biggest dangers that we have. And, having seen some of the stuff that's going on in society, it's kind of hard to disagree with him here. Pope Francis on Friday morning gave an address on the importance of building a culture that protects human and Christian vocations. Things he suggested were at risk due to contemporary cultural challenges, including gender ideology. Here's a quote: "It is very important that there is in this today, the ugliest danger is gender ideology, which cancels out differences," the Pope said during an audience with members of the French-based academic organization Research and Anthropology of Vocations Institute. Gender ideology, which seeks to blur differences between men and women through movements such as transgenderism, makes everything the same, Francis said. Erasing differences is erasing humanity, man and women, or man and woman, however, are in a fruitful tension. Francis told the assembly, which is gathered in Rome for a 2-day international conference. The Pope did not read the full address, instead, delegated the task to Monsignor Filippo. He says, I still have a cold and it's tiring to read for a while. He's been sick. In fact, he had to go to the hospital not long ago. So he had a little hospital visit. So it sounds like he hasn't been doing too well lately. And yeah, he does kind of look a little sick there. I could see it. Focusing the Friday morning address on the anthropological crisis and the necessary promotion of human and Christian vocations, Pope Francis said this task is challenged by myriad social challenges arising from the cultural zeitgeist. The Pope emphasized that this is a foundational element which underlies every call within the community and has to do with an essential characteristic of the human being as such. This discovery, the Pope added, brings us out of the isolation of a self-referential ego and makes us look at ourselves as an identity in relation. It continues, we sometimes tend to forget or obscure this reality, the Pope says, which carries the risk of reducing the human being to his sole material needs or primary needs, as if he were an object without conscience and without will, simply dragged by life as part of a mechanical gear. And I'll put a link to the rest of this article in the description if you want to read the rest. But as you can clearly see, Pope Francis still remains very firm against gender ideology. I think he's spoken of it as ideological colonization. And so, in fact, there's a very long list of comments that are very critical in nature of gender ideology that Pope Francis has offered. And as I said, he is going to be releasing a new document soon on the matter, which I think is desperately needed. So I sincerely welcome that. Don't know when it's coming out, but it should be soon. Okay, so there is another story about Spanish bishop rebuking one of his priests who joked about wishing Pope goes to heaven soon. Seems like the priest was misunderstood, but agrees that it was in bad taste. A Spanish bishop rebuked comments made by some priests on a weekly internet program about praying for Pope Francis to die as soon as possible. The priest later apologized. Archbishop Francisco posted a statement on the Archdiocese website Wednesday saying it rejected the comments and warned that it may take corrective measures without elaborating. The statement followed an episode on a program on YouTube. Imagine that, a YouTube program critical of Pope Francis. The Sacristy of the Vindi, a counter-revolutionary priestly gathering. Earlier this month, in it, a Toledo priest makes an introductory salute saying, I also pray a lot for the Pope so that he can go to heaven as soon as possible. Oh, so funny. Another priest expresses his support for this while the conversation group, which involves 6 Spanish-speaking priests from different countries, laughed over the comments. Oh, it's just so funny. Yeah, no, that's in bad taste. Come on now. The group then went on to discuss different religious, social, and political issues, mostly from a conservative point of view. Us conservatives, I'm telling you, we got to step it up, especially if we're going to fight against wild and radical progressivism. We got to step it up. The group then went on to discuss different religious issues. In a statement, Chavez says he expresses his profound rejection of any manifestation of disaffection towards the person and ministry of the Holy Father, adding that it has told the priests they should seek forgiveness. The statement says the archbishopric is not responsible for or represented by the statements made by the priests in the internet program. That's interesting. I get the part about the archbishopric not being represented in those statements, but not responsible. I don't know. I feel like A bishop has responsibility and control over what his priests say publicly, but okay. In messages Wednesday posted on its X platform account, I still can't get used to calling it X instead of Twitter. The sacristy of the Vindi group apologized. We are sorry for the unfortunate comment said in a humorous tone about praying for the Pope to go to heaven as soon as possible, it is said. It is a comment in bad taste, and although it does not express wishes for the death of the Pope, as some media have maliciously spread, we understand that it could be understood that way, the group said. Right, right, right. I didn't take it to mean that they want him to just, like, they literally want him to just die, but I took it to mean that they can't wait until he is out of the way because they think he's disastrous. That's the way it came across to me. It said they reiterate their adherence to Pope Francis and the unity of the Catholic Church. Okay. All right. Well, at least they apologize. Let's move on to this next bit here. Let's talk about the Uruguay blessing that is, again, causing quite a stir. People are very concerned. They feel like, well, isn't this scandal evidence that Fiducia Supplicans, the recent document from the Vatican issued in December on blessings for persons of the same sex, they say, well, look, doesn't this show that the document is littered with problems? Well, that's what we're going to explore today. But first, let's examine what actually took place. We got to start there first. So let's take a look at this article. Bishop clarifies nature of blessing given to celebrity same-sex couple. Okay, let's see what the crux has to say. A Uruguayan bishop has issued a statement clarifying the nature of a blessing given to a high-profile same-sex couple. We're going to take a look at that statement here, by the way. Shortly after their civil marriage. Already there should be something jumping out at you right there. If you know anything about the document, already we got a problem, don't we? The blessing shortly after a civil marriage? Well, wait, hold on. Fiducia Supplicans, paragraph 39, explicitly forbids that. This blessing should never be imparted in concurrence with the ceremonies of a civil union and not even in connection with them. Paragraph 39. So already we have an issue. It's already violating the guidelines, explicit guidelines of the document. And it continues, saying it was authorized by the local nunciature and was fully compliant with a new Vatican document permitting such blessing. We're going to take a look at what the nunciature actually told them, what the nuncio actually said. And then we're going to still have to ask the question, was this really in compliance with the Vatican document? Because I already just showed you one violation, and there are others, but I just showed you one. Another one is, nor can it be performed with any clothing, gestures, or words that are appropriate or proper to a wedding, as I will show you in the picture. There's another violation because they have clothing that is very much in connection with a civil union. Another violation. I'll give you another one just for bonus. Over and over, the document tells you that this cannot be done in any way that would cause scandal, and this has caused scandal. It also says that it is to be spontaneous, and this was not spontaneous because there were photographers. They're ready to take pictures and disseminate them all over the internet, which they did. That's not spontaneous, and that is not being careful to prevent any scandal. So this thing is littered, as we will see, littered with violations of Fiducia Supplicans. So I don't buy the narrative for one moment that this was consistent with Fiducia Supplicans. Anyone with half a brain can read the document and say, yeah, no, it's not. On February 19th, Uruguayan actor and comedian Carlos I don't even know how to say his name. And Jimmy, whatever. I don't know how to say his name either. His partner and longtime producer were married in a small civil ceremony. And I'm not even going to try to say their name because here's what happens every time on this channel. When I try to pronounce somebody's name and I butcher it, I start to get a whole bunch of people in the comment section complaining about the way I pronounced it. So I'm just not even going to try. I'm just going to call them Carlos and Jimmy. So, which they celebrated on February 21st with a blowout party attended by around 400 guests. All right. So they had a civil ceremony, and shortly after that had a party with 400 guests and then received the blessing. The party was described by the media as a religious wedding set to take place in the Church of San Benito, to be presided over by the church's pastor, Francisco Gordalina. Public details of these plans caused immediate backlash amid the Catholic community, prompting the diocese to issue a statement saying the venue was a private chapel and not a parish. That wasn't good enough, so the blessing was later moved to the couple's farm. So it was moved to their private property. Now, again, scheduling this blessing is already a violation of the document because they are spontaneous blessings. As the document says, and as Fernandez has said over and over, they're spontaneous, not scheduled. So yet another violation that I think a lot of people are ignoring. Given the public backlash over the blessing and the headlines surrounding it, Bishop Milton Tracoli issued a statement February 22nd. We'll look at it in a moment, clarifying the situation, saying that given public reaction, he felt the need to explain the decision-making process that led to the blessing, which I don't think his explanation really helped. kind of feel like he throws the nuncio under the bus, and it doesn't check out. After local media first began reporting that a religious celebration would take place inside of a church in the diocese's subsequent statement, a meeting was convened at the couple's request to personally discuss and clarify the situation. That meeting, Tracoli said, was attended by himself, the diocesan vicar general, and the parish, the pastor of the parish in question. It was a long, deep, and serene dialogue in which various paragraphs of the Vatican's Declaration Fiducia Supplicans, authorizing blessing for couples in irregular unions, including same-sex couples and divorced and remarried couples, were read and discussed. That's interesting, given how many times they violated the document. So I would certainly say that the clergy are without excuse. They read the document. I mean, even if they didn't, they are without excuse because they should. Clearly, they read it. They labored over it for hours, and yet any, I don't know, second grader could open this thing up and see that paragraph 39 tells them you can't do this in connection with a civil union, nor any clothing or gestures that are proper to a wedding. I don't know. Okay. It took a few days to be able to make the pertinent consultations, Tricoli said, saying the diocese consulted with the Apostolic Nunciature in Uruguay on how to proceed, given the intense media interest. The Nunciature responded, Tricoli said, saying that the blessing had to be given since there was a document signed by the Pope and that we should proceed accordingly. Now, that's all the Nuncio said from what the bishop says. Obviously, that's all we have to go off of. Now, what I'm reading here from the Nuncio, in all fairness to him, he's just saying you go through with a Fiducia Supplicans blessing because the Pope has signed off on the document. He's nowhere saying go through with a violation of this document. Go through with this blessing in a way that violates it. I don't see any of that there. I see them consulting him. Can we do this? Yeah, sure. Yeah, you can bless somebody who requests it. Sure. Fiducia Supplicans says so. Now, if that's not what the nuncio said and the nuncio is somehow on board with abuses or whatever, then the nuncio's wrong. At the end of the day, he would just be wrong. But I don't have any evidence that the nuncio is wrong because all they provided is this, and that nowhere authorizes an abuse of the document. So all the nuncio is saying is, yes, you can go forward with these blessings, but he doesn't tell them, and here's how you're to do it, and here's what you're not to do. No, those guidelines are right here in Fiducia Supplicans. And I would suspect that the nuncio was expecting them to follow the guidelines of the document. I mean, because after all, I mean, isn't that pretty reasonable to expect that people should do things according to the rubrics? Well, I don't know. Maybe these days that's not a reasonable assumption. Maybe you got to actually tell people that these days. I don't know. When we then communicated to the interested parties that the blessing would be given and reminded them that it would not be in a church, that it was a blessing of the people and not of the union. Oh, okay. All right. So they're recognizing that this is not of the union, it's of the people. They're even telling the people, hey, this is not a blessing of your union, it's of you. The problem is in execution, regardless of intentions, in execution, they're giving everyone the impression that it's a blessing of the union. And you'll see why in a moment. So you can tell the people all day long, hey, this is not a blessing for your union, it's a blessing for you. And so, okay, in and of itself, your act is not sinful. But if you still do so in a way that misleads everyone else, that's still scandalous. And that still requires that you don't go through with it in those circumstances according to the document. The document tells you over and over, you can't go through with this if it's going to cause scandal. So, in other words, what would be the only context in which you could give a blessing for these two persons and not their union? Privately, spontaneously, no cameras around, a call to repentance. I mean, those conditions. But that's not what we ended up getting, as you'll see here in a second. In fact, I'll give you a sneak peek. Here's an image, one of the images of the blessing. Now, you can see him. He blesses them individually, right? But what are they wearing? Tuxedos. And what is in this in connection with? It's in connection with their recent civil union, right? Now, again, what does the document say? You cannot do this. It should never be imparted in connection with the civil union, nor can it be performed with any clothing or gestures or words that are proper to a wedding. This is 100% a violation of the document. And the nuncio never allowed them and permitted them to do it under these circumstances from what they provided. All the nuncio says is, well, you have to bless them. Yes, you have to bless these persons. Of course, sure. But that doesn't mean that you have to do so in a way that violates the document. I don't see that anywhere. But again, if the nuncio told them to do it in a way and he approved of it in a way that violates the document, then the nuncio's wrong. But it says it was a blessing of the people and not of the union. So I would say, okay, so your intentions were good. So you get an A there, but you get an F in execution. And you also get an F in reading comprehension skills because clearly you just didn't read paragraph 39, or you read it, you know better, and you wanted to cause a scandal. There's that third option as well. That's possible. I will give the benefit of the doubt and say that that wasn't the intention, but it is a possibility. At the very least, you get an F for reading comprehension. It was not a church wedding, and that because of this, it would be done discreetly. But how's it done discreetly when you have cameras? Hmm. Yeah, that doesn't work, right? And seriously, discreetly, they're wearing 2 tuxedos. Come on now. This isn't this isn't intended to be discreet. This was not spontaneous. It was not discreet. Stop it. So what the bishop is telling us is contrary to reality. So I don't know if the bishop didn't get the memo, if he didn't actually see the pictures, and doesn't actually know what took place, or if he's just lying, or if he's delusional. I don't know. But what he's telling us doesn't match up with reality. The photo shows something very different, and it shows a violation of the document. And yes, that violation has caused scandal. Ergo, it should not have been done, at least not in the way that it was done. It should have been private, again, discreet, as he says, spontaneous, and very clear that this is not for their union, but for them as persons, not with cameras around, not with tuxedos, not in conjunction with the civil union. And that because this would be done discreetly without the presence of guests, that it was a simple blessing, he said. Uh, who took the photo? Who took the photo? I have to assume it was a guest who took a photo. Okay. So the bishop is saying this, maybe that he's describing how they intended for it to be, but this isn't the way it was executed at all. And so it was scandalous and a violation of the document. And what it does is it further gives energy and further gives more traction to the critics of the document. And some people are going to say, well, see, it's a problem with the document. No, no. Look, I can open up my Bible, show you all kinds of things in the Bible that people twist every single day. The problem isn't with the Bible. The problem is with the people who twist it. So there's nothing wrong with the document Fiducia Supplicans. There is something wrong, however, with bishops and priests who are implementing it. And so we're fine in criticizing those things. But to then point the finger at the document, look, you just can't do that when the document is so explicitly clear that this was a violation and this should not have been done. You can't blame the document for that any more than you can blame Jesus for some people in church history who castrated themselves or cut their arms off or whatever, because Jesus does have things in scripture where he talks about that. I can give you numerous other examples. You can't blame Jesus for that. You have to rather blame the people who misinterpreted those things from Jesus. So, in the same way, I wouldn't fault the Bible. I'd fault the people who twist the Bible. I don't fault Fiducia Supplicans, but I do fault the people who twist Fiducia Supplicans or neglect it or fail to implement it properly. There is legitimate criticism that needs to be offered there. Is it with the nuncio? From what they provided, I doesn't look like it, but still possible. Maybe they didn't give us the full thing that the nuncio said. Is it with the bishop? I don't know. To me, it looks like what the bishop is saying isn't matching up with reality. So there might be some issues there. Is it with the priest? Certainly with the priest, because the priest clearly read to them Fiducia Supplicans, so he knows the guidelines and then goes and does this. So he knows better. At the very least, this is on the priest, if not also on the bishop. So I'm not buying it, however, when anybody tries to say, oh, well, you see, this is the fruit of Fiducia Supplicans. No. And again, if you try to be consistent and apply that to the Bible, you would have to throw out the Bible. Oh, you see, this is the fruit of the Bible. Oh, you see all these schisms in the church. Oh, you see all these different denominations. That's all because of the Bible. I mean, that is what atheists will say. I even know Muslims who will say those things. They'll use that argument. Don't use the argument of atheists and Muslims. Be more consistent as a Catholic. All right, let's continue with the argument or the article. After weighing factors of location and scheduling, Tricoli said the blessing was given privately at the couple's home. Tricoli acknowledged that media coverage of the blessing may have hurt the sensitivity of some and may have confused others. Yeah, you think? You think? Uh-huh. Now, my question is, if this was to be done discreetly, how did you have media coverage? Right? Do you really mean to tell me the person who took this photo just like was hiding in the bushes or something? Like a spy guy who's, hiding in the bushes and snaps a few photos. Is that what was taking place here? Pretty sure the guy who took the photo is way out in the open. And by the way, it's not just one photo. There's a lot of them. So I'm pretty sure the priest knew. Not to mention, I'm pretty sure the priest can see the two people he's blessing have tuxedos on. So yeah, there's no excuse there either, is there? And so, yeah, obviously, this has scandalized some people, and ultimately, I wanna say, well, the responsibility is on the priest and the bishop, but I feel like they're trying to punt to the nuncio and trying to throw him under the bus. However, he said it also moved some to come closer to discuss their personal and family life situation, thanking the church for its closeness. That's irrelevant because the ends don't justify the means. So why would the bishop even say this? He should know as a bishop, the ends don't justify the means. So you can't cause scandal and violate the church's document because some people might come closer to the church through that scandal. That doesn't follow. That doesn't logically follow, right? You can't do evil that good may come. This is just a very basic principle in Catholic theology and morality. As the same document, Fiducia Supplicans declares, the church continues affirming the sacred value of marriage between a man and a woman in an exclusive, stable, and indissoluble union that is open to life. This is not a question, he said. The goal of Fiducia Supplicans is to pastorally draw near to couples who find themselves in irregular situations, Tricoli said, saying this is not done for ideological reasons, nor for propaganda, but seeking that the love of God reaches everyone. Okay, yeah. But one of the goals of Fiducia Supplicans is also to avoid any form of scandal. we missed that part, didn't we? In any case, precisely to avoid any form of scandal or confusion. And it says it over and over and over and over and over. Another point of the document is to call these people back to obey God's law and to conform themselves to God's will for their life. You could see that right here at the end of paragraph 34. You could see that with paragraph 10, where it speaks of an urging for them to obey God's commands. Right here. And then you can also see with paragraph 31 that they would receive actual grace to grow in fidelity to the gospel and be freed from their imperfections. That's another one of the goals that the bishop seems to have left out. It's not just to pastorally draw them near, it's also to help free them from sin. We'll continue here in just a moment. Going to take a quick break and step away for just a moment, and we'll resume. So hang tight. Hey friends, do you want others to discover why the Catholic Church is the church that Jesus established? And do you want to help people make sense of all the confusion in the Catholic Church today? Help contribute to this mission by supporting Reason and Theology at patreon.com/Reason and Theology. By doing so, you'll also get access to exclusive content for patrons only. Also, if you want to deepen your faith, there are free ebooks and even courses that you can sign up for by visiting reason.podia.com. All right, let's continue here. Going to share my screen again. Here we go. Okay, it continues. He said, the novelty of Fiducia Supplicans and its pastoral implications mobilizes us all and is an invitation for the church to conduct a deep reflection on how to continue seeking paths of evangelization. Well, okay, I sure want more paths of evangelization, but evangelism includes a proclamation of the gospel and a call to repentance. Let's not forget that. So if we're going to talk about paths of evangelization, great. I love it. I love to hear that. Love to hear the word evangelism. Yes, but that includes a call to repentance and belief in the gospel, something that we have to urge people to do. It is a great challenge which requires prayer, discernment, and reflection, he said, and invited Catholics in his diocese to continue walking together in this time of Lent, which leads us to the desert to temper our hearts on the journey toward Easter and to renew ourselves internally. None of this is in my opinion relevant to addressing the scandal. It seems like just deflecting. One aspect of the saga of the couple's blessing that has drawn ire from critics of Fiducia Supplicans is the fact that Tricoli sought insight from the papal representative in Uruguay, setting what they argue is a dangerous diplomatic precedent. I don't care so much about that part. I mean, yeah, it is kind of weird that he would even need to ask the nuncio any questions because the document's pretty straightforward on what to do and what not to do. So I am a little concerned that the bishop would actually need to ask. But more importantly, I would just have to say that it seems to me like they're throwing the nuncio under the bus because from what they quoted from the nuncio, he nowhere tells them, hey, yeah, go ahead and violate the document in the way that you did. So that's my bigger concern here. In the January 4th clarification on the application of Fiducia Supplicans, Cardinal Fernandez, prefect of the Vatican Dicastery of the Doctrine of the Faith, which issued the document, said local bishops had the power to make decisions on blessings of couples in irregular situations as they know the local situation best. Sure. Yes, he does say that. And he's also the same Fernandez that tells you that you do not need to cause scandal and you don't need to be doing anything in relation to a civil union. That's that same Fernandez who said that. So there's that whole, pink elephant in the room. Going to the Vatican for a simple pastoral blessing for critics could cause broader complications with a bishop's ability to govern and problem solve in their own diocese. Well, I do have a concern that the bishop wasn't able to solve this problem without consulting the nuncio, given how easy it was to just read the document. I'm going to say this as respectfully as possible. If you have to consult the nuncio on this, I imagine you would have to consult the nuncio on everything else as a bishop, which would then lead me to the question, do you really need to be a bishop? We shouldn't have to ask basic questions. You should be able to open up a very simple document and read it for yourself as a bishop. I don't know. Maybe I have high expectations of the bishops. Let's see. The couple has also reportedly spoken about having a child through surrogacy, a practice that Pope Francis fiercely condemned and called on the international community to eradicate in an audience with the diplomatic corps accredited to the Vatican last month. Okay. Well, let's go over here to this news outlet that posted about it. It's a news article that was originally in Spanish, but I'm using Google Translate, so bear with me. The doctrinal declaration, Fiducia Supplicans, brings concrete results in Latin America. Unfortunately, they are completely different from what people who take every provision of this declaration seriously could imagine. I'll say, and exactly what all sober-minded people expected. I'll say, given that it violates the document left and right. In Uruguay, a priest blessed a homosexual couple who had entered into a civil union a little earlier. Criticized, he pointed at the bishop because he consulted the blessing with the apostolic nunciature. So they're all pointing the finger. The priest is like, well, I asked the bishop. The bishop's like, well, I asked the nuncio. Yeah, okay. No, that's not working. That's not working. And again, as a priest, why would you even have to ask? I mean, already this is a celebrity couple. You know that they're going to try to make headlines out of this. So no, you know that it's going to be abused. It's going to become a scandal. And you know perfectly well that this isn't a spontaneous blessing. And so you as a priest should have known better. You didn't even have to ask the bishop. Again, maybe I have high expectations from priests. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe the problem is with me. Maybe I should look inward at my expectations of the clergy. A photo from the event showed two well-dressed men sitting on chairs in a garden among flowers. The priest placed his hand on one of them's I guess they mean it's Google Translate, one of their head and give a blessing. The priest is sure that he acted well. He confirmed that everything was consulted with the nunciature. No. No. I'm sorry. How incompetent can we be, honestly? With all due respect. How incompetent? How in the world can you read Fiducia Supplicans and say, I acted well? I even confirmed everything with the bishop and the nuncio. When, again, the nuncio didn't say, yeah, go and abuse the document. He just said, no, you need to offer the blessing because we have a document that says you need to offer the blessing. Okay. And then the document tells you how to do that. And I'm pretty sure the nuncio just expected you to follow the guidelines on how to do it. Then again, I don't know. Maybe the nuncio was all on board with violating the document. I don't know. I don't have any evidence of that because what they quoted from the nuncio doesn't suggest that. The bishop also stated that everything was done correctly. Nope, bishop. Nope, no, it wasn't. Bishop Tricoli, this is your point. This is your part where you're supposed to say, hey, guys, I'm sorry. It's kind of like that issue with the St. Patrick's Cathedral in Cardinal Donley. This is your moment to say, I'm sorry. And I will make sure it doesn't happen again. And mean it and be sincere and take measures to prevent this from happening. This is a learning moment right here. This is not the moment of everything was done correctly. We consulted the nuncio. Stop. You're justifying scandal that you created and that you have no excuse for. And a good leader would say, I'm sorry. And I'll make sure it doesn't happen. Good leaders don't say this. Everything was done correctly, even if the blessing was given to homosexuals on the day they entered into a civil union. So on the same day they entered a union, when it literally says, this blessing should never be imparted in concurrence with the ceremonies of a civil union and not even in connection with them. Okay, let's walk through that again. Everything was done correctly, even if the blessing was given to homosexuals on the day they entered into a civil union, versus this blessing should never be imparted in concurrence with the ceremonies of a civil union and not even in connection with them. If human languages have any meaning to them, you cannot say everything was done correctly, because this is an absolute contradiction, not an apparent contradiction, an absolute contradiction. If words still have meaning. Now, if words don't mean anything anymore, oh, okay. But I'm pretty sure the bishop wouldn't actually be able to live a day with that mentality, practically. So pretty sure the bishop would concede, yeah, words still have meaning and human languages still mean something, and they can still be known, and meanings can still be understood and grasped and attained by the human intellect. Okay. And so far as that's still true, and last I checked, it's still true, there's no way to square that circle. So again, this is the moment where the bishop just needs to say, hey guys, I'm sorry. Sorry, violated the document. I suspect the bishop didn't even read it. I guarantee you. I would put money on it if I were a betting man. Guarantee he didn't even read Fiducia Supplicans. I guarantee he just punted to the Nuncio. Hey, Nuncio said go through with it. All right, there it is. Hey, well, guys, we did everything right. You didn't even read the document, did you? Clearly not. As a bishop, it's your job to read this stuff. You should know it. So come on now. All right. No wonder he had to consult the nuncio. He didn't even read it. Hey, I didn't read that memo you sent, so just go ahead and tell me what I need to do. Can you imagine talking to your boss like that? Hey, boss, I know you sent out that memo on what we're to do in this situation, but hey, I didn't even read it, so go ahead and just tell me what I need to do. Again, I suspect that's what happened. Nor can it be performed with any clothing, gestures, and words. Again. All right, let's go back to the article here. Interestingly, the case caused a really big scandal because it was not about anonymous homosexuals. Right. The first of them was Carlos, an actor, comedian, and director, well known from Uruguayan television. The second is the actor's 47-year-old manager. Right. And this was scheduled and predetermined. As opposed to Fiducia Supplicans that is supposed to be spontaneous, not scheduled. The bishop of the place said that he really had no choice but to agree to the blessing. Yeah, no. We consulted the nunciature, and we were told that it's necessary to give a blessing because there's a document signed by the Pope, and we should behave accordingly, the bishop said. So the nuncio told you, yes, you have to go through with a blessing, but he never told you that you have to violate the document left and right. And you shouldn't have to be told that. You should know that as a bishop. And as a priest, you should already know not to, if you're going to do this, do it according to these parameters. So again, just punting, trying to shift the blame back to someone else instead of taking responsibility. And I think throwing the nuncio under the bus. I don't think the nuncio is happy right now. But then again, hey, maybe the nuncio was all on board, as I said, with violating the document. That's possible. I just don't have any evidence for it. And what they provided, it doesn't sound to me like that's what he was suggesting. But maybe he's on board with that. And again, if that's the case, then he's wrong too. And we need to question whether or not he needs to be there. But look how this is twisted in the media. Watch this. The actor and manager initially wanted to receive a blessing in the chapel. However, here the bishop set the limit. That's why it's finally done in the garden of a private house. Uruguayan media reported that the act of blessing each homosexual was extremely moving, especially since the priest acted with the authorization of the Holy See. Blessing persons is with the authorization of the Holy See. Yeah. And you don't even need the authorization of the Holy See for such a thing. It's really common sense. But blessing these two persons in this way is not with the authorization of the Holy See. That's the problem. Headlines in the press and on news channels talk about the first homosexual couple blessed with the consent of the Pope. Yeah, no, the Pope had absolutely nothing to do with this. What the Pope had to do with the situation is issuing Fiducia Supplicans that completely tells you not to do this. That's the Pope's involvement here. Everything else, the Pope had no involvement here. He wasn't even consulted. But again, the news reports it as something it's not. Blessed homosexuals entered into their union in 2024 because that is what a famous Argentinian astrologer advised them to do. Well, hey, I mean, if the astrologer tells you to become Catholic, then go ahead and do it. Oh, I'm sorry. He told them to enter their union. Let me clarify that. Well, again, if the astrologer tells you to enter, then you gotta do it. The astrologer said it. So, isn't one of them like 47 and the other one's like 82 or something? I guess that makes sense now. I mean, if the astrologer told the 82-year-old, you got to get married with this 47-year-old, and both of them like are diehard into astrology. I guess you got to do what you got to do. I mean, the astrologer said it, so I mean, you got to do it. It is what it is. They also announced that they wanted to hire a surrogate who would give birth to their child. Yeah, I feel like this is a situation where there needs to be a more effective call to repentance, and we completely failed them at that. The priest failed them. The bishop failed them. This is not right. Well, here's the letter from the bishop addressing the issue. It's in Spanish. So I'm going to have to go through with my Google Translate, but this thing is not that great. So bear with me. Those of you who are Spanish speakers, you are more than welcome to correct this thing in the comment section. Seeing the repercussions that the blessing of the two people has had on some people in the ecclesial community, I consider it important to share with you the path traveled with this relationship. Okay. After the first announcements in the media about a religious celebration of the home in a church, in the diocese, announcement by the diocese, a meeting was held. That part, it doesn't look like it translated. A meeting with the priest and the two people. He read the document Fiducia Supplicans, and some of its contents were made. He read that to them. Yeah, you kind of failed at that one. Again, F for reading comprehension skills if you actually read the whole thing. In this dialogue, we asked them to receive the blessing, the possibility that they could declare the document so as to appear in an irregular situation. By the way, the phrase irregular situation, if I recall correctly, is in reference to people who are divorced and remarried. In the case of homosexual unions, it refers to them as such, not... I don't think it calls them irregular situation. So I would point that out. Sorry. If you do a few days to be able to carry out the relevant information. I don't know what that means. Okay. Again, this is Google Translate, so bear with it. We consulted the nuncio about how we should proceed in this situation, which was foreseen with medical characteristics. I don't know what that means. Again, I'm sure it makes sense in Spanish. We were informed that we had to give the blessing, and given that we had a document signed by the Pope, that we had to proceed. Right. But where did the nuncio tell you? You need to do this in a way that violates the document. You need to do it in conjunction with their civil union, and they can have tuxedos on, and you can have cameras nearby. See, none of that is in there. And so if it wasn't the intention, okay, then why did the priest proceed with this? And then why don't you at the very least apologize for it after the fact instead of punting and shifting and deflecting and, hey, we did everything right kind of thing? Oh, we asked the nuncio, blah, blah, blah. No. This is not how you handle a scandal. Okay. I understood that the mediator of the situation may be able to affect the sensitivity of some and may sometimes be confusing with others. I don't know what that means. Let us inform those interested that the blessing would be given, and if they were recorded, that it was not in a church. If they were recorded? I thought it was supposed to be discreet with no recording. That it was a blessing to the persons and not to the union. Okay. You did good there. You made the proper and essential distinction. It's for the persons, not the union. Okay. But if you still do it in such a way that everyone gets the impression that it's for the union and not the persons, then you failed. You failed. Because nobody should even be seeing it. There shouldn't be any cameras. That's the problem. He says it was not a housing for the church, and that for the same, it would be done in a discreet manner without the presence of guests, that it was a simple blessing. Yeah, you failed. You failed. And this could have been prevented when you see the two people come out with two tuxes on, right? Two tuxedos on. It shouldn't have proceeded. You should say, I'm sorry, we can't do this. And clearly you're trying to do this in conjunction with a civil union. I apologize. We can't proceed in this context. The nuncio tells you can go through with a blessing, but not in that context. I understand that the mediated situation, blah, 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 is stated in the same document, Fiducia Supplicans. The church continues to affirm the sacred value of marriage. Yeah, that means nothing if you're going to violate the document and cause scandal. It doesn't mean anything. You can say, I uphold marriage all day long, but if you're going to cause scandal when you bless two persons and do it in a way that is scandalous and do it in a way that causes confusion and blurs the lines, then it's a waste of time to even talk about what you maintain theologically because you're not maintaining it practically. The document is careful to avoid that problem. It's very careful to avoid it. The problem is we're not following the document. It says sometimes the document looks for pastorally to those who find themselves in irregular situations, and he doesn't do it for ideological reasons nor for propaganda unless he seeks charity. Yeah, but I mean, clearly that was for propaganda. If there's somebody standing nearby and they're posting it all over social media, obviously that is for propaganda. So I'm not buying any of this. Bishop failed, priest failed, threw the nuncio under the bus. That's my conclusion. Doesn't look in any way like they did what they were supposed to do. And okay, after this miserable failure, at the very least, just have the integrity to come out and say, hey, sorry, we did fail here. We should have done better. Going to make sure this doesn't happen again. At the very least, that's what you should be doing. That's the least that you could do as leaders. Instead, this just makes it worse. That being said, I am not going to side with anybody who says, well, see, hey, this proves Fiducia Supplicans is wrong, because actually, no, it doesn't. Any more than the Bible tells you thou shalt not steal, and somebody reads the Bible and then goes and steals and says, hey, the Bible lets me steal. You wouldn't buy that. You would say, no, you're twisting the Bible. It still doesn't let you steal. But hey, the Israelites plundered Egypt, so I can steal too, right? Yeah, no, you're not an Israelite plundering Egypt in an Exodus. That doesn't let you steal. And it says right here, thou shalt not steal. So yeah, no, that doesn't work. But you see, you can abuse scripture in the exact same way. And nobody would say, oh yeah, that then means, well, at least nobody who is in their right mind and is being objective and sincere would say that means then that somehow the Bible should be thrown out or the Bible is to blame. No, the person who's twisting scripture is to be blamed. Likewise, I'm not going to blame Fiducia because Fiducia has plenty of things that said this is wrong. I will, however, blame the priest and the bishop because they completely failed here. So that's my assessment. I hope you found it helpful. If you did, hit the like button and the subscribe button. And help share this on your social media so people can hear a balanced take where we don't have to approve of scandal, but we also don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater and throw out the magisterium's document or throw it under the bus. There's a middle position here. You can affirm the goodness of a magisterial document without affirming scandal. And you can decry scandal without throwing under the bus a good magisterial document. It's possible to harmonize those two things, and that is what we should be doing here. So try to share this on your social media with people that might be confused due to this and need kind of a balanced take. Hopefully, again, this was helpful. All right. See y'all later. God bless. Hey, friends, do you want others to discover why the Catholic Church is the church that Jesus established? And do you want to help people make sense of all the confusion in the Catholic Church today? Help contribute to this mission by supporting Reason and Theology at patreon.com/Reason and Theology. By doing so, you'll also get access to exclusive content for patrons only. Also, if you want to deepen your faith, there are free ebooks and even courses that you can sign up for by visiting reason.podia.com. Have you ever noticed that certain Catholic teachings are classified differently? For example, some are called dogmas and others are called doctrines. And then a denial of one of these teachings might be called heretical, while a denial of another might just be called an error. In reality, there are many classifications to various teachings that may be found in the Catholic Church. In my course, The Theological Notes, I offer a crash course on this system that will prepare you to identify a teaching's classification more easily. And I'll also help you determine what level of assent or adherence you are required as a Catholic to give to a particular doctrine. So, if you would like to take this course, visit reason.podia.com. Are you a Catholic thinking about converting to Eastern Orthodoxy? Or are you a Protestant discerning whether or not to become Catholic or Eastern Orthodox? If so, I have the book just for you. It's called Answering Orthodoxy. It engages all of the arguments that Eastern Orthodox use against the Catholic Church. I respond to all of them. I show that they are in error, and in fact, they're inconsistent, because the things that Orthodox are objecting to are in fact found in their own tradition. So the fullness of the faith can only be found in the Catholic Church. Check out the book right now at shop.catholic.com for your copy today.